Good evening, all. Chair Lawrence, you can call the meeting to order. It's 6:31 p.m.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Lawrence. I'd like to welcome you to today's meeting, October 7th, 2021, for the 2021 Supervisory District Lines Advisory Commission. On behalf of the 15-member commission, I'd like to thank all of you for your interest in this very important process. It's not an overstatement to say that we, this commission, and all of you are helping to ensure that the fundamentals of democracy are alive and well here in San Mateo County. As you may know, San Mateo County is divided into 5 districts. Voters in each district elect a member to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors. Now, our work today will help determine which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together in those 5 districts. Why is that important? 1, how and where districts are drawn can shape communities' ability to elect representatives of their choice. 2, districts substantially equal in population help to ensure residents have equal access to representation. And 3, revisions to the district boundaries have lasting impact. They will remain in effect for the next decade. Also, it's important to remember that members of the Board of Supervisors are full-time elected officials who oversee a $3 billion plus budget. Those budget funds programs that include social services, public health, housing, roads and infrastructure, county parks, elections, and of course, public safety. The Board of Supervisors also acts as a primary local government for residents who live in unincorporated areas and not a city. So, we look forward to hearing from you tonight about what you consider a community and where you might draw the lines and help us define districts for the next decade. Thank you all for being here today. Yield to the chair, to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll do item number 1, roll call. Commissioner Azos?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Bandrapalli?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Barber?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Bledsoe?
Present.
Commissioner Chan?
Present.
Commissioner Chow?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis? Let me just check the attendee side 1 second. Okay, Commissioner Davis is absent. Commissioner Dinan?
Present.
Commissioner Espinoza?
Present.
Commissioner Guerrero?
Present.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz? Is absent. Commissioner Albert?
Here.
Commissioner Romero?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Salander?
Present.
And Chair Lawrence?
Here.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, item 2, is to adopt a resolution finding that the result of the continuing COVID pandemic state of emergency or a meeting in person would present imminent risk and death or health of attendees.
And Chair Lawrence, before we move forward to item number 2, let me just actually go over the Spanish interpretation languages for this meeting. So members of the public, this meeting will be interpreted into Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. To access the audio channel for these 3 devices, 3 languages, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen at your taskbar. There you will see a menu that will appear and you will be able to select your language of choice. And Mr. Hernandez, can you translate and have your staff members as well translate?
Thank you, Suki. Muy buenas noches. Les queremos dejar saber a todos que esta reunión será interpretada al español, el mandarín y el tagalo. Para poder acceder al canal de audio de estos 3 idiomas, usted tendrá que hacer clic en el icono del globo o en un icono de un mundo situado al fondo de su pantalla en la barra de tareas de esta plataforma de Zoom. Después de eso aparecerá un menú y usted podrá entonces seleccionar el idioma que usted desee. Thank you. And now I'll pass it over to Wei Quang Tang for Mandarin instructions.
谢谢。这个网上会议呢，将会提供西班牙语、国语普通话和那个菲律宾话的口译服务。要使用这3种语言的翻译频道，请你点击你荧幕底部任务栏上的地球图标按钮，然后呢就会出现选单，请从选单选择 Chinese 中文，这样子呢便可以听取那个国语普通话的同声翻译。谢谢大家。还要等一下了，这个那个翻译功能启动以后呢，这个大家才在选择。谢谢 ，Thank you。
Thank you, Wei. And now I'm going to have Susana Leug provide the instructions in Tagalog. Susana.
Thank you, Victor. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Ito pong pagtitipon na ito ay isasalin sa Espanyol, sa Mandarin at sa Tagalog para po makuha ninyo ang channel para doon sa mga pagsasalin na ito ng 3 lingwaheng ito. Tingnan nyo po yung nasa Zoom ninyo na merong mundo na icon. Yun po ay pindutin ninyo at may makikita kayong menu na lalabas ang mga lingwahe, ang mga wika at piliin po ninyo ang wikang Tagalog. Salamat po.
Thank you, Victor. And for the record, Chair, we do have Commissioner Monza and Ruiz now present. Back to item number 2, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 2, as I said, we need to adopt a resolution.
第2个项目了。
Item 2 is to adopt the resolution. I'll ask for a motion.
I move. This is Nirmala Vanderpali.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chair, we call roll call vote.
Thank you. Mr. Counsel, do we need any discussion on this, or we can proceed with the public comment?
You're asking me, Mr. Chair or Mr. Clerk?
Yes. Yes.
If there's, I would recommend that if members of the commission have questions or would like to discuss, we should go ahead and do that and then proceed to public comment. And I'm here to answer any questions that the commissioners may have as well.
Are there any questions from the commission?
I wanted to clarify, it sounded like the motion was to not meet in person. Was that correct?
That is correct, to continue meeting via Zoom.
Great, thank you.
And to clarify, the motion is to adopt a resolution finding that as a result of the continuing COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency, meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment?
Sure, thank you. Members of the public, now is the time to raise your hand if you wish to comment on item number 2 only regarding the resolution. So if you would please raise your hand, and then I'll give you the permission to speak. Okay, I do see one hand raised. Patricia Mayal, I'm giving you the permission to talk, so please speak.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I can't see, I'm on my cell phone. So the item 2, is that regarding the maps or not?
Oh, no, that would be item number 6. And I'll call for public comment when that item comes up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's more on the redistricting.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair Lawrence, I don't see any other hands raised. So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Bonderpally, seconded by Bledsoe. I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonderpally,
Yes.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Guerrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Albert.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes with Commissioner Davis absent. Please proceed.
Okay. Item 3 on the agenda, oral comment communication from the public for any item that's not on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. So as members of the public, as Chair mentioned, item number 3 is for any comments that are not related to items on the agenda. So if you wish to speak, please click the raise hand feature now. Okay, I do see one hand raised from Ray Buenaventura. I'm going to give you the permission to talk. Sir, go ahead, please proceed.
Thank you, Suki. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. I want to thank you all again for convening and serving on this commission. I think it's it's a good idea to remind and remember that how this whole issue developed. Change in regard to having district elections did not come naturally. It came as the result of a lawsuit that was filed that was headed by the Asian Law Caucus. There were, I believe, 5 plaintiffs who signed on to it, who were residents of the county, who demanded change and recognized and wanted to make sure that minority communities were represented and had a chance at representation on the Board of Supervisors. So this was their effort, and I want to recognize and thank them for starting this process and just making sure that we are mindful that that was the goal. And it's something that the community took seriously, that the Board of Supervisors and the voters took seriously. And so I'm encouraged by the meetings that you've had and the deliberations you've had. I will tell you that I believe that at least one of the proposed maps are completely unacceptable. There are other few ones, but I'm sure when we get to comment, I'll make comment on those. But thank you for your service.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Buenaventura. Okay, I'll allow maybe 10 more seconds if members of the public wish to comment on non-agenda item. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Before we move to item 4, let's look at item 5. Let's move the approval of the minutes to the next meeting. They're not completely prepared at this point in time, so we're going to take item 5 off the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. So that'll be a part of your motion for item number 4, Chair, whoever makes that motion.
Okay. So item 4 is I'm looking for a motion to set the agenda.
I move that we set the agenda with the change that the chair has suggested.
I second.
Thank
Been
you.
moved and second. Any questions?
Thank you. The motion is to set the agenda and postpone item number 5 to a future meeting. I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonderpally,
Yes.
Commissioner Barber,
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Chan,
Yes.
Commissioner Chow,
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan,
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Guerrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. And motion passes with Commissioner Davis being absent. Please proceed.
Item 6 on our agenda, the public hearing, communities of interest, and the draft maps of the supervisory district boundaries. Item A is a summary of the testimony received by our Deputy County Manager, Justin Mates. Mr. Mates.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm very pleased to be with you this evening, and thank you, as always, for your service on this commission. I just want to introduce this subject quickly. Most of the meat of this item will be covered by our demographer, Kristen Parks, but wanted to start off by just updating you all on the public comment and testimony that we have received to date. I know this has been a concern for several weeks about getting more public comment. I'm pleased to say that in the last week, we've received substantial number of public comment through various forms. And as I shared with you earlier in the week, all of that public comment, including transcribed live testimony that you have received at public meetings like this, are available on the smcdistrictlines.org website. And that is updated on an ongoing basis and will continue to be a sort of live list of all the public comment received to date. So as of this afternoon, when I last checked, we had about 45 comments to date, including 6 of the community of interest surveys or forms that we have shared with you in the past, 31 emails, 5 live testimony pieces, and 2 social media comments. As I've mentioned before, we are receiving comments and open to receiving comments on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag SMC District Lines. The public comment will continue to be gathered throughout this entire process, right up until the board adopts the final map. For any members of the public who are listening tonight, we encourage you to continue to submit public comment, both in the form of live testimony at meetings such as this, as well as through our website, through a community of interest form, by submitting a map, either of districts or of communities of interest. We will accept everything that comes in, but I would encourage members of the public that if you want to maximize the opportunity for this commission to be able to consider your public testimony or your map, I would encourage you to submit it by September 16th, next Saturday, to allow enough time for the commission to consider it in time for its October 21st meeting. And with that, I will hand it over to Kristen Parks unless there are any questions for me.
Are there any questions of Justin? Seeing none, let's go to item B, a presentation of draft maps by our stenographer, Ms. Parks.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. This is our first opportunity to look at maps that have been submitted by the public as well as prepared by NDC. So I am going to share my screen, give you a quick overview of the maps that we have received, and then we will take clarifying questions from the commissioners, and they will have a discussion and public comment as well. But I want to take a moment to commend everyone who has participated thus far, and hopefully members of the public that are just listening or tuning in for the first time will engage with this process, as it is something moving very quickly, and our deadline is in December. So we want to hear from everyone, as many people as possible. So let me share my screen. All right, so just a bit of background of how we got to where we are today. There have been 2 online mapping tools available to the public to submit maps through. Just today, we have updated the DLAC website with a paper mapping tool for folks who have not been able to access the online tools or who would rather draw their maps on paper. So that is now available to you. We received 4 complete maps from the public so far, right? And there's plenty of opportunity for the public to continue to submit those maps. And then NDC prepared 3 maps. So I'll be showing you a total of 7 maps today. And I wanted to start by showing you our official adjusted population data. Some of you may remember, if you've been following this process, that the census data came out very late from the Census Bureau in August, and then California had to do an adjustment. So this is the first time that I am presenting this to the public, the final adjusted by the state of California population numbers for San Mateo County. And so we don't see a huge change from the release in August, but just to highlight our total population here, 765,417 residents in the county. And for the current districts, we do see a population balance, which is the total deviation being under 10%. The total deviation here in red is 9.65%. What that total deviation reflects is the difference in population size between the largest population district and the smallest population district as a percentage of our ideal district size. So I know all of this is very technical and you want to see maps, but as we start looking at maps, it's important to keep in mind that one of our main goals when drawing these maps is to draw each district relatively equal in population size. And so that ideal population size for each district will be 153,083 people. So of course, some of the districts are slightly overpopulated, some of the districts are slightly underpopulated related to that ideal number. So this map is exactly the same as what you've seen before. It's districts 2 and 3 that may need to lose a bit of population, and districts 1, 4, and 5 that may need to gain a little bit of population. However, of course, there are other considerations that we must consider when looking at district lines. So I'm going to jump right into the maps now. We did receive a series of maps from the public that are not population balanced. However, it's important for us to present these to the commission and the public so that they can see any ideas that may have come out of these maps if we wish to incorporate them or attempt to incorporate them into maps that will be population balanced. And again, when I say population balance, I'm referring to that total deviation from the largest district to the smallest district. So this first map, 51501, has a 14.71% total deviation. And you can see here that it has some jagged borders, but notably it does create a majority Asian American community or district in District 5, though it does split South San Francisco and San Bruno there along the freeway. So moving to the second public map, I'm showing you the non-population balance ones first. We have map 52056. This map, as you can see, creates a coastal district. However, it is not population balanced either. It has a little over 15% total deviation of population. However, it expresses the idea that there is putting all of the coastal communities together into District 5 here, though we do have some otherwise quite jagged boundary lines. Map 57388 is another not population balanced map. However, it reflects a very different approach to the districts for San Mateo County and has drawn boundary lines north to south or the lines themselves go east-west, right? But they've ordered the districts kind of stacked on like a layer cake. I would call this the layer cake idea. Again, it's not population balanced. Oh, wait, this is the one that's population balanced. I was thinking there's an extra map here. This says not population balanced. This is the population balanced one. All right, so this one is not population balanced. Does have some jagged borders again. One of the reasons that we care about the jagged borders is we want to make sure that the district boundaries are easily identifiable to everyone in the county. Let's jump to that balanced map here. This is the one map that we've received thus far from the public that is population balanced. And you can see that in some ways it looks similar to the current district boundaries, but there are some changes. I'm looking for my notes to see what the actual total deviation here is for this particular map. However, we can return to all of these. We can look at them on the interactive review map. We can zoom in, zoom out, and look at the demographic information as well. And I want to also let the public know that all of these maps are on the website, smcdistrictlines.org, and they are available here as these PDFs, as well as on an interactive map that you can zoom in and out. All right. So NDC also tried to incorporate all of the public comment that, or as much of it as we could, that we have received thus far, the commission has received through this process. And if you haven't checked out the public comment page on the website, it is also an excellent resource for transparency in this process. All of the public comment received is listed there for everyone to view. And there's also a form if you would like to submit feedback, and we really encourage you to do that. I will say these three maps that I'm presenting for NDC, I did not personally create them. So when you criticize them, it won't hurt my feelings, but I am going to be able, hopefully, to answer questions that you have about them. So the reason that we created the coast map here was based on public comment and community of interest map from the public, suggesting that the coastal areas were a community of interest and should be preserved together in one district. And if you recall, we do have to comply with California's state law, the Fair Maps Act, that says to the extent practicable, our districts should not divide communities of interest. So we have heard testimony that the coastal areas are a community of interest. So the overall deviation for this plan is 7.89%. And what you can see here is that it does keep South San Francisco together. However, there is a split in San Bruno. And if you move a little bit south, you're also going to see a split through San Mateo, right along Highway 92. This map also splits Redwood City along El Camino and Maple Street. And other than the 280 through Daly City, our borders are also trying not to divide any heavily Latino or heavily Asian American neighborhoods. So that's kind of a broad strokes overview of this map. And again, none of these maps are being presented as final versions. These are all being presented as ideas or concepts. And as we continue going through this process, all of these maps are subject to change. So please keep that in mind when you see things that you don't like. That's a good thing, because that's information that we can use to make better maps for you. I'm going to show you the next map, which is NDC's city focus map, which was created in response to public comment saying that certain cities. So the current district map splits some cities throughout the county. And there was public comment encouraging this commission to try to not split cities. So this map aims to split as few cities as possible. It's only splitting 2 cities. As you can see, it's splitting Burlingame and it's splitting Redwood City. So the population balance here is a total deviation of 6.73%. And the highest Latino districts here are districts 4 with 26% and district 1 with 22%. Then we also have an Asian American majority district of district 5 here. I will say that the 2 cities being split in this map are cities that are not split under the current map. So this is again, in that way, quite a change. And finally, this is the minimal change map that NDC prepared. And the reason we prepared this map is because if you recall from that very beginning, when I showed you the final official population numbers, the current district boundaries for San Mateo County Supervisor districts are technically legally population balanced because the total deviation is less than 10%. However, there are still opportunities to listen to all of the public input and make some minor changes to the current map. So that is the goal here, and trying to maintain the integrity of cities and communities wherever possible. So the population balance for this minimal change map is at a total deviation of 6.85%, which is already less deviation than the current boundaries have. The highest percentage of Latinos that we have in this map is in District 4 at 27%. And again, District 5 is a majority Asian American district. Looking at what may be popping out to some of you sort of in the middle of this map, you will see Belmont is split. Belmont is split under the current district lines and this minimal change map, but the minimal change map has created a slightly different boundary that splits Belmont. And San Bruno and South San Francisco, if you see here, have also, they're also split with the eastern portions of the cities in District 5. So this is a lot to think about. I want to take a moment before I take clarifying questions to show you the website where you can find all of these maps and create new maps. So just quickly showing you, if you go to smcdistrictlines.org, the homepage here, you click on draft maps, and you'll be able to see all of the PDFs from what I just showed you, along with the detailed demographic information that I was just summarizing for you, not showing you. And if you scroll down to the bottom, there is an interactive review map here where you can zoom in and out. What's showing to start is the current boundaries. You can look at any of these maps here that I showed you on this interactive map. So that's another tool available to you. And then if you're motivated by what you've seen tonight and you think, oh my gosh, I can do better, we hope that you can. And I encourage you to click on Draw a Map. On the website for Draw a Map, there are tools for the public to create maps. There's 2 online mapping tools, as well as paper mapping tools that you can print and draw directly on. So with that, I will stop my screen share for the moment, but I'll be ready to bring it right back to look at some of these maps more in depth.
Why don't we open it up for questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I have a question about the numbering of the districts in these proposed maps. Is that arbitrary, or does it have impact as to which districts will be holding elections next year? So right now, I believe it's 2 and 3. So will that stay for next year? That if there is new districts 2 and 3, where there are changes, are those the ones that are up for election next year?
Yes, so the election cycles do follow the district numbers. So that is an important consideration in all of the maps that we're preparing.
And my follow-up question to that is it possible to move those numbers so that it more closely matches what the current districts are?
Yes, I believe so. I have to consult with the person who drew the maps, which is Doug Johnson. But yes, I saw that question. I have that question as well.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Azos.
Thank you. My question is related to the division of cities. So I know that in 2013, the decision of which map to choose was based in part, not in full, but in part on minimal city division. But then when I'm comparing that against the collection of kind of criteria that we can look at, if that city isn't otherwise designated as a community of interest, is that still a valid, is it still a valid consideration, or is it not?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It absolutely is. And if you recall, there is that rank ordered list of criteria. Interestingly enough, for counties, communities of interest in neighborhoods are higher up on that priority list. They are directly above cities and places. So if there were to be a conflict between what someone was identifying as a community of interest versus the city, it could take precedence. But both of them are considered criteria that must be respected to the extent practicable.
Wonderful, thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, as we've discussed previously, when the maps were drawn in 2013, the board and the advisory commission considered kind of these same criteria that are listed in the law that Kristen just explained. Back then, though, there was not a rank order, right? So you didn't have to put communities of interest above cities, right? It wasn't contiguousness, communities of interest, cities, and the rest. It was, you may consider these factors when drawing maps. And so now with the change in the law, as Ms. Parks has explained, it has basically, codified those considerations and ranked them for us to consider. So there's a bit of a distinction between what the law was in 2013 versus what is now before you for this go round, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. That clarified what I was looking at also.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Commissioner Guerrero, you had your hand.
Oh, my question was answered, so no worries.
Okay. Commissioner Overt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question related to sort of map drawing and looking at changes. I actually took a shot the last couple of days for fun putting together a map of my own. And one of the things I discovered in using the Maptitude tool is it would be really great if there was a way to see at the end of the day how my map differs boundary-wise from the existing boundaries. And I noticed you had something like that on the summary page after you have finished processing and analyzed the submissions. Is that the only way that kind of comparison could be done, or is there some way inside of Maptitude for people drawing maps that they can say, well, now I'd like to see how what I came up with differs from where we currently are?
Yeah, absolutely. So both in Maptitude and in District R, you can see the current district boundaries. When you are in Maptitude, I think the easiest way to do that is to start, well, you could start drawing your map with the current ones, or you could start from scratch and just view the current boundaries as a layer. And perhaps that's what you're asking about. But yes, if you have saved or shared that map that you've drawn, or if you will, we can reopen it, or you can open it and I can actually show you. Let me pull up Maptitude here, where you can turn that layer on. Takes a moment to load, but that will be under the layers and the options area here, which once this loads will be here. Okay, maybe this is not actually a map. Maybe I need a new map. New plan from a blank map. Right. Okay. So say you're going in and you're drawing your district boundaries here. Under layers. Oh, can you not see them? Let's see. Current districts are green. Okay, so they're just hard to see. So if you look at this legend here, they are there. They're in green. It is, I know it's a challenge to see that.
No, thank you very much.
But it is there.
Yes, I find the challenge I had is you summarized it in your last comment. They're difficult to see once you start drawing stuff. So, all right, but that answers the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chan.
Earlier, Kristen, you mentioned that the state of the population data for the different tools was in a state of flux. Like District R was still using the 2000 population or 2010 population data, sorry, and like the Maptitude had the non-revised data. So can we assume now that both tools have the most up-to-date numbers and both can be used to draw accurate district boundaries?
Unfortunately, the answer is no, they are not updated yet. And we are pulling our hair out every day, hoping that we get word that they are updated. However, both tools do show you the numbers that you're working with, right? And they're not so far off from the actual numbers. And keeping in mind what that ideal district size is of 153,083, I believe, that is something you can, keep on a Post-it note. But yeah, it's frustrating.
Ms. Parks, can I clarify, are both tools still using the 2010 census data? Or
No, neither of them are.
Money, but not
Correct.
Without the prison reallocation.
So because these tools are not just California specific tools, they did not, no one else, right, is doing a prison adjustment. That's California. So we are waiting for that prison adjustment, but they're not 2010 numbers. What they are estimated 2020 numbers that are prior to, if I'm looking at it, yeah, I'm seeing estimated population for both tools. So we will make an announcement and that will be prominently shared with everyone as soon as those tools have the adjusted numbers, because that's important. I will say the paper mapping tools that we released today do have those adjusted final numbers. And we will also be releasing another version of the paper tools that have an Excel spreadsheet with the final numbers as well. So this has been a crazy journey in terms of data. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that the California adjusted data, it was supposed to be released September 20th, was released September 21st, had a bunch of errors in it, and had to be re-released on September 27th.
Okay, thank you. I see Commissioner Salinger's hand.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a quick question. I'm not sure if it's possible to be answered, but I know we have to consider districts being compact and having easy to follow boundaries. And I wonder if there's any examples to go off of, like when is a district no longer compact enough? Because just for example, in the NDC minimum change map, there are a few districts that like not only split up cities, but like just for example, District 5 kind of has this peninsula shape hanging down. Like, yeah, when do we decide that that's not okay? But obviously if the communities of interest are there, that's more important and all of that. But just, yeah, what are the considerations for things being compact?
Yeah, so keeping in mind that compactness is the lowest priority item on that rank ordered list. And, you know, this is probably not something you want to know, but for demographers, there's actually several different formulas that we use. And so there's several different ways to measure compactness. Again, I think you're thinking about it the right way, which is sort of in terms of weird shapes. And the reason that you may sometimes want a district that isn't compact is if, for instance, you are complying with one of the other criteria that are more important. So you're absolutely right when you mention communities of interest. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'll also just add that the comment, I think, kind of mushed together criteria 4 and 5. So 4 is that the district boundary should be easily identifiable and understandable by the residents. And that references kind of those natural boundaries and barriers. And then 5, which is the last consideration, is the compactness consideration. So just wanted to clarify, those are 2 different but related criteria.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Ms. Parks. The maps that are drawn, is it maps that are proposed, is it able to get to the ethnic data those maps have in it versus what the current district and that ethnic data, so we can understand, are there major shifts of that kind of data being proposed?
Oh, that's a great point, Chair Lawrence. While all of the proposed maps do have the racial and ethnic breakdowns posted, you will want to compare them with the current districts. So I actually think that current one, I need to upload to that same site so that you can compare it. And I will make a note to do that this evening.
Thank you.
Mr.
Are there other
Chair.
questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, it's Rudy.
Please.
Thank you. I have another question. Is it possible to create another option as you did for the coast map, but that includes more of the unincorporated areas? So one of the main feedbacks that I've been reading from folks in written comments is that they want to see not just the coast, but also the incorporated parts. They feel more connected as being represented as an entire incorporated area of the county versus just a coast. So the current map is just a coast. I know that from what I hear from the community, it would not be acceptable, even though it does keep the coast together. It separates the unincorporated areas that we see on the southern part of the county. So I was hoping that that's something that can be included. I saw a flurry of messaging from the communities. If anyone had a chance to read them, but they all pretty much have that same message. So I would love for us to have that option to review soon. So is it possible? I guess is my question to you, Kristen.
Yes, and that was actually one of our considerations. Here's what the challenge was. When you take those coastal communities, those coastal cities, and the central unincorporated areas, you're not quite getting enough population to form a whole district. So you have to add in something else. When you add in, if you're adding in all of Daly City and Broadmoor, you add way too much. So we can attempt to do better on that, but it just to let you know why it's a challenge.
No, Kristen, sorry, and I failed to add this detail that I think that there's also a desire to be still connected to some of the cities that they feel the areas that they're more close to, like Woodside, Atherton, and those that have higher populations that would probably help keep those contiguous and connected. So yeah, so that was my question.
Thank you. And that's exactly the sort of direction that NDC is hoping to get from the commission is direction for how to revise these maps and what other maps you would like to see.
Ms. Parks, are the current proposed maps splitting more cities that exist today? Because I'm constantly getting that the cities that are split don't want to be split. So are we exacerbating that problem?
In these maps, no, I don't believe, at least in the NDC ones, we're not exacerbating that problem. In our cities focus map, we are only splitting 2 cities, whereas the current supervisorial district split 5 cities.
Okay. Commissioner Obert.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. You touched on something that I wonder if we as a commission shouldn't discuss at some length. I'm not sure exactly how we do this, but when we talk about splitting cities, I think both the existing map and some of the other examples that we've seen sort of show that you're probably going to end up splitting some cities someplace. Okay. So, and that's not necessarily a problem because it's not the highest ranking criteria. It's really a community of interest, as I recall, is the highest ranking criteria. So the question I think comes down to, are there parameters or perspectives that the commission feels might or should be followed when talking about splitting a city? And for example, I'll just give you an example involving San Carlos because I happen to know it fairly well from having lived and been on the council here. Very, very loosely speaking, there are 2 parts of San Carlos. There's the sort of flat part down, which is relatively heavily populated, has the industrial commercial area on its east boundary. And then there's the hill area. Okay, there's the part in the western part of San Carlos. And frankly, in some of the southwestern parts of San Carlos, it borders on some very rural type communities or housing. And one could argue that if one had to split a city like San Carlos, maybe that's the way you split it, okay? In recognizing that it's not that people in the hills think one way and people in the valley think other ways, but that they may sort of form a community of interest in that sense and have somewhat different perspectives. I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I think if we don't have some discussion about what kind of splits are we willing to see, I'm not sure what Kristen's going to be able to do when she's faced with the challenge of, I got to split something somewhere, okay? And maybe by random, she'll come up with a split that we all like, but if we gave her some guidance, it might be helpful. So I toss that out there for something that we might want to discuss.
Good point. I'll let Brian, you might want to speak to that.
Sure, I can speak to that a bit. I mean, so first of all, just to kind of reorient us, what the considerations are and what the rankings are. So one is substantial population equality, right? That's our first consideration. 2 is compliance with Constitution, Federal Voting Rights Act, right? 3, then we kind of dive into the state requirements under 21-500. The first one is geographically contiguous. The second one is communities of interest. So there are 3 considerations before we get to communities of interest. So I think that's one thing to consider and just make sure we're properly oriented. Secondly, the state requirements, the contiguousness, splitting of communities of interest, cities, it's all preceded with to the extent practicable. So there is a certain amount of practicality that we have to consider. To your point, Commissioner Olbert, it's going to be nearly impossible to draw a map that gets everyone exactly what we want, right? We're not going to have every city to be not split, to have every community of interest to be not split, while at the same time maintaining substantial population equality and compliance with the Voting Rights Act, right? Like I wish there were an ideal perfect map that gets us all those things. Anyway, I'm not 100% sure if that's responsive, Commissioner Olbert, to your concern or question, but I did want to make sure we were properly kind of oriented as to how we consider what in what order and recognize kind of the practical concerns that we're faced when so doing.
Commissioner Bledsoe.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to echo some of the public comment, and I would really encourage commissioners to read the public comment, most notably, well, most of which are from the coast and from the unincorporated coast. People feel very strongly over there that our community of interest is related to our desire or need to live in a rural or semi-rural environment. And we have very special needs, most notably because of our isolation, our access to emergency care in the event of an emergency, our access to healthcare. And so I would really support whether it's actually the coast map. I'm not sure yet. I'm kind of backing into this process by looking at the maps and by process of elimination, rejecting what I think is inappropriate. But I would just put out there when we're talking about a population balance with regard to the coastal communities, one of our negative community interests, if it could be termed that way, is the fact that when we're lumped in with more populous communities, we have utterly no chance of representation on the Board of Supervisors. And, you know, with the exception of, I believe it was James Fitzgerald, for whom the Marine Reserve was named, our last supervisors have been from Emerald Hills and Atherton. And I'm not saying that they didn't do an admirable job of representing our district, but I think people are really pining to have the ability to get someone elected there. So I guess this is more of a peeve than a commissioner comment, but I would urge people to really think about that when we're trying to devise the lines that configure the coast.
Thank you, Commissioner Bledsoe. Are there any further comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate Commissioner Bledsoe's comments. I mean, if you read through the public comment, there is this strong opinion, right, coming from the coast on keeping that community together. I have a background in rural development, and so for me, that's really important to hear it. The folks seeking self-determination, right, and representation on the board. So I do think that we should, at least from NDC, get a potential map, even if the deviation isn't perfect. But if the communities on the coast will feel like they're have an opportunity to be represented, we should be able to see at least the options, right, and weigh it so the community knows that they're being heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Olbert.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, one of the things that I drew upon when I was playing around with creating a map today and yesterday was, I don't know if I've shared with folks before, I am a motorcycle rider, and I've spent quite a bit of time in the last 4 or 5 years riding all over San Mateo County, because it's actually a fantastic place to ride, as long as you stay off the freeways. It actually helped sort of inform my thinking about answering that question that's been posed recently about, hey, if the coastal community area and the unincorporated area isn't quite large enough of itself to meet the population guidelines, and I don't think it is. I think if you don't add something to it, it's so far off that it would probably not be an acceptable kind of map. The question boils down to, what do you add to it? What's the nature of the communities, the population areas that you choose to add to it, so that respecting its desire to have a shot at representation, that it has that shot. And there too, I think, is an example of something that the commission may want to have some discussion about. What trade-off, what types of communities do we think should be added to it? Because the goal of saying let's respect their desire to and their community of interest, that's great. I agree with that. But it doesn't get us across the finish line of defining the district. So the question is, what do we add to it? And again, if we discuss that, we might be able to give direction to NDC that would more focus what they're going to play around with. And I don't know what those are. I mean, I have my own opinions, but it might actually be interesting to hear from the coastal representatives if you had to add something to the coastal communities to increase the size of the population in your district, who would you add? What would you add? I'd be interested in hearing that.
Thank you, Commissioner Over. Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, it would also be interesting to know, just like after you draw a district that includes the entire coastal community of interest, how short are we in terms of population? I have no idea what the order, how large that deviation is. And, you know, it would help me sort of understand how difficult the balancing act, if we could get like an actual number and how much that differs from the target 152,000 for equally sized districts.
Yeah, so and I have in my notes here that once you combine the unincorporated areas and the coastal cities, you are 71,000 people short of the ideal size of 153,083. But I'm happy to actually prepare that, you know, in a spreadsheet so you could see what's being included, or even just, you know, show you that on a map. So I can bring that next time for sure.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner
Or
Clark.
prior.
Well, you know, one thing I like to say too is, while we're deliberating on this, is that we receive a limited amount of public input, and the majority of that's come from the coast. So I don't want to overweigh that as we look at all the other districts. So let's just keep in mind that, you know, we have to look at all the districts. And I do respect the coast for making noise and coming forward, but we haven't heard from enough people who I would feel very comfortable just using that input. And I'll recognize Commissioner Mazone.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to make a comment. This is all great. I'm learning a lot, but I like to keep it simple. And what I mean is the people out there, I want to speak out for my neighborhood. What is this district lines? Many people, they haven't heard anything about it. So the way we've been making aware of this district lines on our event a few weeks ago was, this is to actually have a participation of, you know, opportunity to participate. This one sounds very complicated. Most of us here probably will be more savvy to navigate. That's great. But really, I will echo some of the comments. Let's listen what the community says. And what I find on my participation in the community is, when we don't deliver what we promise, what we're trying to do, that is where the people doesn't participate. So we don't have too much participation right now on comments, mapping, because many processes haven't delivered. So I'm listening, everybody, I'm listening, this is wonderful. However, the meat, we're not delivering. We will be very short by December 15. I don't want to be negative, I'm trying to be positive, but I will actually listen to the community, because it seems like we don't have too much wiggle room to accommodate everybody what they would like to see. And if we're going to be very technical, we are forgetting about the everyday people. And we will be back on 2022, where this one was just an exercise and people didn't have actually the opportunity to voice it out their input. So we gotta listen to people's input, right? So let's just invest a little bit of time, perhaps to the paper maps, instead of being so technical to the numbers, because we will lose the people. The everyday people, they don't get too much tangle. You can barely get their attention. So on our event, we're trying to communicate, there were interest, but the interest was like, okay, so what what we're going to achieve by giving our input and what we're trying to get out of this. And it's very challenging because I personally don't know how to offer that. I'm making them aware as a community member, but actually what happens if in December 15, January 15, we actually don't change anything? So we go back to 2021, August, where we didn't have this commission. So I will suggest, I will encourage that let's keep the technical part simple. Let's just go back to our communities because as we can see, there is not too many public participation. And that is why most of us here, we have a passion for our communities and our cities, but not everybody has that, but they would like to participate, but we have to deliver it. The way I'm listening, we're getting too technical. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marzano. Are there any other comments for the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll suggest that we move on to item C, which is to open the discussion for public testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just need a motion to open the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I move to open for public hearing.
I second.
Okay, I'll take the roll call now. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Mr. Bandapali,
Yes.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Bledsoe,
Yes.
Mr. Chan,
Yes.
Mr. Chow,
Yes.
Mr. Dinan,
Yes.
Mr. Espinoza,
Yes.
Mr. Guerrero,
Yes.
Mr. Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Mr. Albert.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Romero.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Salander
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. For the record, Commissioner Davis is absent and the public hearing is now open. Members of the public, for those who are attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raised hand feature in order to organize any public comment. When you hear your name called, I will send you a request to unmute your mic. And once you accept the request, you can begin speaking. You will be given 2 minutes and the timer will be shown on the screen. These instructions are being provided in Spanish, Mandarin, and Tagalog. If you want to hear this meeting in any of those 3 languages, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen on your taskbar and select your language. Council, did you have something to say before?
Yeah, I was gonna say, before we move to that, it looks like Brian had a question.
I just wanted to make a quick comment through the chair. My apologies. Item B was, if taking a look at the agenda, was a presentation and a discussion and a potential action of providing direction to staff for additional maps or modification to additional maps. I think what I heard from the commission is that it would be wise to hear from the public, to get some public testimony about some of these issues and then potentially circle back to that item. So I just wanted to let you all know that if that were the pleasure of the commission, we could certainly do that. And wanted to just make that clear.
I would support that, and I'll throw it out to the commission. Is anyone opposed to that?
Through the chair.
Yes. Commissioner Over.
Thank you, Jim. I certainly support getting more and as much public input as we can. I guess maybe I was under the mistaken impression that our meetings are all going to be including that as an element, and that we're continuing to do outreach efforts and whatnot. I guess so I support it, but I guess I'm a little curious as to what that means and anything that we're going to be doing different. That's what I'm unclear about.
Yeah, I only pointed it out because it's a specific agendized item in this meeting that as in sub B, that there is a discussion in providing direction. I didn't want the commission to think that because we're moving from that specifically agendized item to the next, that we were for any reason precluded continuing to have that conversation. So I think it's in line with Commissioner Olbert's point that I just wanted to make clear for the commission that that technically we can still obviously consider that. And I didn't want you to think that moving on now precluded you all from kind of looping in the input from the public, if that makes sense.
Thank you for the clarification, Brian. I appreciate it.
But Mr. Olbert, there is something I think a little fundamentally different about this meeting in comparison to other meetings, which is that, and it's just a function of the timing. You know, our expectation and hope is that there's going to be a recommendation from this commission to the Board of Supervisors when it meets again in 2 weeks. So that means that subdivision B is particularly important. And I think that what staff is looking for is exactly the kind of direction that, for example, Commissioner Espinosa gave earlier in the meeting, where he indicated he would like to see a map that does X. And then, of course, you know, there'll be some more questions like, okay, well, if we're gonna do X, what else are we gonna need? So I think that ideally there will be a continued robust discussion tonight about what the commissioners would like to see when we come back on the 21st. And it could be that the commissioners say, you know what, take the NDC city map and do X, Y, and Z. Or it could be, you know what, I don't like any of these maps. NDC, please do A, B, and C. I'm using letters. I could give specific examples, but how this meeting is different is because at the next meeting, the hope is that the commission will be able to recommend a map. Staff needs direction from the commission as to what it wants to see on the 21st.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. I'll recognize Commissioner Olbert again.
Thank you, David, for clarifying that again. I'll just make the observation. I understand now exactly what staff is looking for from the commission. Personally, I don't think I would be surprised if we were at the point where, given the feedback that we have given so far, that at our next meeting, we're going to be able to coalesce on a map, a recommendation. I don't say that's not a criticism, but it's just, I think that, you know, for example, Commissioner Espinosa had a request to have NDC look at something. I certainly support looking at different alternatives. Whether that particular one is of any interest to me, that's a different question. So I guess I didn't appreciate that we were on quite such a short shot clock. And if we are, it would be my recommendation that we need to spend a lot more time tonight discussing what parameters we want to give staff for coming back with these maps that we're going to choose amongst at our next meeting.
Very well said, Commissioner Olbert. I certainly echo those feelings. I'll move to Commissioner Romero.
So I just wanted to say, oh, excuse me. There's a horrible echo. Okay. I wanted to echo what Commissioner Edemes was saying earlier about how there's a real interest in moving away from the technical and focusing more on what the community. I think one thing that I wanted to clarify was I was under the impression or the understanding that up until this point, we were discouraged from, as commissioners, to draw our own maps based on the feedback that we were getting, because we didn't want those maps to influence the maps that were coming directly from the community. So that's, I think, the first, and I don't think it really makes any difference if that's not the case. I think the direction we're getting today is if there is a map that we would like to see drawn with the help of the staff, to send that request directly through Justin. Is that correct? So that's my question. If I'm hearing from the community that I work with and represent and that I'm an advocate for, should my request then go directly to Justin and Ms. Parks? What is,
So again, I mean, first, I am not by any means, and I'm sorry, I should have identified Commissioner Espinosa Murray. I should use his full name, and I'm sorry about that. I recognize that you have not been given a lot of time, and you're being asked to do a very complicated thing in a very short period of time. And I recognize also that you're not blaming staff. And so I'm not trying to defend us, but we didn't create this timeline. A prior presidential administration that delayed the census data for a very long time, compounded with an upcoming election. That's what's caused this, I'll call it rhetorically, everybody's jammed up. That's the situation. And we need this commission to bring a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors by November, maps, so that the Board of Supervisors has the time it needs in order to actually approve them. So that's the reality that we're all facing. Nobody likes it, but that's our reality. As to your specific question, Commissioner Romero, there are multiple ways that you can provide feedback. This is a public meeting. I mean, ideally, to the extent that you can, discuss today and give staff some ideas as to what maps you would like to see drawn, that's great, because this is a public process, and by giving direction during the public process, you are participating in the most transparent way possible. However, recognizing the fact that we are under a very shortened time, if after today, after this meeting is over, you get a bunch of feedback from the community and you want to see an additional map or two that you would like staff to present on the 21st, you absolutely can send that request to Justin. And I'm sure that we will all do the best we can to honor it. My hope, of course, is that not every single one of you request 10 more maps, because that will certainly make for a very interesting meeting on the 21st. And I really don't want to see smoke come out of Kristen's ears. But no, you are all encouraged to provide, feedback, in the mode that you can and feel comfortable with.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. I'll recognize Commissioner Chow.
Mr. Chow, you're on.
Sorry about that. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for sharing all this map. This is kind of like the first time I actually see the map. I did have an opportunity to draw some of the map and test it out. I think there will be more actions when we're gonna go to participate with the city council meetings that's coming up, probably starting next Monday, the 11th. So I'm hoping having the public to attend those city council meetings will get a little bit more input from our community. So I'm hopeful for the next 2 weeks, we'll get some more public participation in this map, and we can also show them, what is out there right now that they can consider and participate. So that's my input. I'm looking forward to, work with our communities for that. And thank you for the script. I think that's very good idea to have a standard script that goes to all the city councils.
Thank you, Commissioner Chow. I'll recognize Commissioner Romero, then Bledsoe, then Espinosa, and then Commissioner Guerrero, in that order.
Thank you. So given what Mr. Silverman said, I would like to request a map, a draft map for District 5 that incorporates part of Old South San Francisco to make up that, I think, 5,700 difference. I can give specific sort of parameters. I have to jump on and see if I can draw something, but if I'd love to see something like that with the overlay of renters and specific racial and ethnic demographics.
Thank you, Commissioner Miro.
So, and Kristen, I don't know when you jump in on something like this, and that's exactly the kind of comment I think that staff is looking for, Commissioner Romero. But just in context, so we have a situation where District 5 is underpopulated, right? And so you have indicated one way to increase the population in District 5 is to pull voters from South City, and you want to identify particular areas, which is great. You're pulling from District 1. So District 1 is also underpopulated.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can tell staff that you would like to see a portion of South San Francisco placed into District 5, and staff can run with that. But if you also have some ideas about how they can then,
offset the
population in District 1, that's also helpful. I'm not saying you have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't. If you don't, then staff, NEC is going to have to try and figure that out. But this goes to Commissioner Olbert's comment earlier, and why this is so hard. And ultimately, that's why it's great that we have NDC to help us. But these are the sort of the push and pull that everybody struggles with as you work with these maps.
I totally get that. And it's really hard to do over Zoom, right? Right. It's really challenging to do. So, but I think, I hear what you're saying about the push and pull balance, and I can give more details in an email, because I think it's easier to convey and to allow everyone else to speak, because now I see a lot more hands.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I just wanted to clarify that what would be most helpful to NDC is if you can specify, what is Old South San Francisco in terms of streets and boundaries with some clarity.
Through the chair, I was just going to make a recommendation, and I want to appreciate and echo the appreciation that others have spoken to today regarding the robust discussion we're having. I think everyone appreciates that there are actually maps now that can be discussed, and it really helps facilitate these very specific comments. And I think this is a great discussion. I think what I would recommend, and Kristen, I think this is for all of us, is we have opened the public hearing. I think there are commissioners who still want to speak, which is fantastic. Then, when the time is right, Chair Lawrence, if you want to move on to the public comment, I think that'd be great. And then I think we, per what Brian suggested earlier, I think we can circle back to this discussion about the direction to give to NDC to come back on the 21st. And maybe at that point, Kristen, this is a long discussion, but we're all trying to track it as best we can. Maybe we can sort of summarize, or you can help us summarize the direction you've heard and what you plan to be working on to bring back. And we can have that as sort of at the end of the conversation, so everyone's on the same page as to expectations before the next meeting.
Thank you. Let's move to Commissioner Bledsoe. I think she was next.
Yes, thank you. Well, if appropriate, I would like to remove one of the maps from consideration of the commission. Is that appropriate at this time?
Yes, you could do that if you wanted to take action to do that. You could do that. I don't know whether Chair Lawrence and the commission were comfortable with Deputy County Manager makes a suggestion. I know that I believe there was a motion to open the public hearing. I don't know if there was a second. I'm not sure there was a roll call.
There was, yes.
There was it done? Okay. So then at this point, if Chair Lawrence were so inclined, we could take public comment and then circle back for additional comments from the commissioners, and any votes that you wanted to take to remove maps, to request additional maps, whatever you would like to do. I will observe that I don't know that you necessarily need to vote not to consider a map. I mean, ultimately, when you come back on the 21st or whenever it happens, you're going to recommend specific maps to the board. You're not going to necessarily have to say not that map, but ultimately you could.
I like the suggestion, but before I move on, to be fair to the commissioners who's raised their hands, rather, if they want to speak now, I'll wait until we come back. I'll defer them. Commissioner Monzon.
You're on mute, Mr. Monzon.
I'm sorry. I would prefer the public gets the opportunity to speak now. I can come back later. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I do see that there are 8 hands raised from the members of the public. First, I'm going to call on Josh Powell, followed by Alison Gonzalez. Mr. Powell, please accept the request on your screen to unmute your mic and begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
So thank you to the commissioners for volunteering your time for this incredibly important work. I appreciate the seriousness with which you're approaching this and the profound impact that this will have on San Mateo for years to come. So I came tonight, I'm a resident of Belmont, and I wanted to speak because Belmont has been split for the last 20 or 30 years between different supervisors. Belmont's not that big of a city, and I realize that there are many rules to follow in building this map, and it's incredibly challenging, but if at all possible, would like to see Belmont remain together this go around. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Alison Gonzalez. If you could please, I'll give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lawrence, and thank you, Chair Lawrence and commissioners for your time, and also Commissioners Espinosa and Bledsoe for reflecting the interests of the coastal community. I'm a resident of La Honda, and I actually wanted to follow back on a comment from Commissioner Chan about the population of the unincorporated coast. I was wondering if Ms. Parks, you could make the spreadsheet of populations available to the public so that we might also be able to see the current populations in the districts and the unincorporated part of San Mateo County. And then coming back to Commissioner Olbert's point about splitting cities, and I think this may reflect the interests of Belmont as well, I'm curious if I could understand a little bit better what the interests are of cities versus communities of interest, especially when those cities have their own governments. That's something that, I think from what I understand, there's issues that are pertinent to cities, but that communities of interest are more valuable for this discussion. And I'm just curious, like, what types of interests could possibly be important to cities for purposes of the districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Patricia Mile, followed by Heather McAvoy. Patricia, I'll give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you for the time and the dedication you are giving to this crucial issue. I live in the unincorporated area of San Mateo County since 1989. I'll tell you why this is so important to us, because we have been unrepresented for decades, underrepresented for decades. We have needed our own supervisor on the coast side. A case in point is the 2010 election, when our coastal representative, first one to run, April Vargas, won the popular vote on the coast side, but couldn't defeat Don Horsley on the peninsula where there was more population. They had a runoff election and she couldn't get over 50% of the vote. So he's been in there forever. And he did not reach out to any of the communities out here to even try to let us know this was going on. So in reaching out to other communities, like you need to everywhere to get more public input, what is the process? Are you on the Google groups? Are you reaching out to immigrant populations like in our South Coast, the migrant farm workers, the farm workers? The census was taken during a hostile environment under the Trump administration. We know that affected the census numbers. Is there a way of knowing and reaching out to folks in these populations so we do have their input and their numbers. Thank you so much. If I can be of any help, please let me help. And I'll put comments in writing also. And thank you all. I wish there was more time because it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Next speaker is Heather McAvoy, followed by Ray Buenaventura. Heather, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, commissioners, for your service and your time. My name is Heather McAvoy. I'm a 35-year resident of La Honda, a former trustee of the La Honda Pescadero Unified School District, former member of the San Mateo County Committee for School District Organization, and currently the vice chair of the Customer Advisory Committee for County Service Area Number 7. The coastal and mountain communities of La Honda, Skylonda, Loma Mar, Pescadero, San Gregorio, Half Moon Bay, El Granada, Moss Beach, and Montara are a community of interest. We have issues in common such as agriculture, farm worker housing, rural schools, coastal forest and watershed management, managing tourism and traffic, including those who ride motorcycles, on our rural roads, natural resources and open space. In spite of our large geographic area, we already do not have a strong voice due to our sparse population. I advocate for maintaining a district that includes all of these coastal and mountain rural communities so that our voices and our needs are not further diluted. I would also like to note that the maps presented by the demographer in her presentation don't show the whole county, and the communities of San Gregorio, Loma Mar, and Pescadero are not shown. That's discouraging as these areas already feel somewhat invisible in county politics. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Heather. Our next speaker is Ray Buenaventura, followed by first name Eric. Mr. Buenaventura, I'm going to give you the permission to talk, so please proceed.
Yes, good evening, everyone, again, and thank you for allowing me to speak on this very important issue, especially for District 5. I want to first commend Commissioner, I believe his name is Manson, for really bringing this back to what really is at stake here, which is representation for the people. And I know that there is obviously the technical side to it and the need to satisfy the numbers, and that's why you're having such a robust and thorough discussion. But I like the way he phrased it and how the people really have to be interested. And so I would encourage firstly that the county still needs to do more outreach. I know you've already done some, but you could always do better. And it shouldn't stop just because the meetings are going on, and we should get more creative in how we're going to outreach to more people. And then with respect to the specific maps and what has actually been proposed, I have discussed this with a lot of my fellow community members, and I can tell you that the map that is totally unacceptable is the coastal map that goes all the way down to, I believe, to La Honda. The one that looks more acceptable is the minimum change map that's been proposed. You have to understand that in the North County and Daly City in particular, we have a community of interest. We have the Filipino population in particular, who has migrated to the city, who has had a tremendous effect on the city, the culture, the community. And so it's a very strong population, and we see that the minimum change map seeks to preserve that and ensures that there's no real dilution of our votes and our voting power. So thank you for offering these comments. I hope you continued success in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buenaventura. Next speak, Mr. Chair, we have 4 more hands raised. Next speaker is Eric, followed by April Vargas. Eric, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Please proceed.
Okay, good. Thank you. So my full name is Eric Black, and I'm not sure why only my first name was showing. I am also a La Honda resident, and like Heather McAvoy, I am a member of the CSA 7 Citizens Advisory Committee. One thing I want to point out is that communities of interest are not necessarily geographically delineated. It is easy to draw maps and draw lines around people, but that is not necessarily how we are connected as a society. I have lived here on the coast side for 38 years, and the coastside community is quite different, qualitatively different from what we might call flatlanders or city dwellers down in the more populated parts of the peninsula. The rural areas here are very, very different in terms of how we live, how we connect, and what we need. And it is perhaps very important for our representation in government to take that into account. Geographic delineations are not necessarily the right way to do it. Perhaps the best way to draw a map would be by community of interest, no matter where they are. And I'm not sure how to do that. It's a very hard problem, and thank you for taking this on.
Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is April Vargas, followed by Cindy Crow-Orgo. And members of the public, if you're joining by phone and you wish to raise your hand, you can press *9, and that will raise the hand in Zoom. So April Vargas, I'm going to give you the permission to talk, and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is April Vargas. I live in Montera, and I want to start by thanking all of you commissioners for the work that you're doing, for the staff. It does seem like a very tight timeline. And I appreciate the fact that we all need to come together and do what's best because we're going to be living with this for several years. I wanted to thank and agree with comments so far from Commissioners Bledsoe and Espinosa, Patty Mayall, Heather McAvoy, and Eric Black from La Honda. One thing as an unincorporated resident that is important is government, as we've talked about. And one thing that we did in the unincorporated area on the coast well over 20 years ago was we formed a Mid-Coast Community Council that includes the communities from Montera through Miramar. So when I saw some maps that looked like it was going to split the current coastal unincorporated areas, that's a terrible idea because we have only an advisory council to the board, and that's one of our main liaisons. So we don't want to break that up. Also, what's been said about the communities of interest in terms of rural, in terms of natural resources, in terms of traffic, tourism, are all really important. This is my first time attending, and so far the minimum change map at this moment seems like a good option, but I will take the time to do more research. But again, thank you, and please do not separate the coastal communities, Pacifica all the way to Pescadero, also on the mountain communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Vargas. Our next speaker is Cindy Crow-Orgo. I'll give you the permission to talk now, and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate the commission. I just found out a few days ago about this whole redrawing because we were not notified as San Mateo County residents that this was happening. I've lived in La Honda for 45 years. And we have not been represented. I agree with Patty Mayall and Heather McAvoy. What they said is so true. And we really need representation. And we don't want to be lumped in with inland cities that have their own government. We have no government. Our sole government is the Board of Supervisors. Who we elect is our representative. And we need to be looked at as special. And I like, communities of interest. That's what we are. We have very unique needs living where we live in La Honda, Pescadero, San Gregorio, the unincorporated areas. So I'm hoping that the maps will be drawn so that we have a voice and have our needs met. We recently had many power outages and we were represented and that was addressed, but we really need help. And I'm hoping that you will think about the fact that we are unique and we don't want to be lumped in with places that don't really understand our unique issues in this area. So that's where I'm coming from. And thank you all. I really appreciate, I was very enlightened by the fact that a lot of you felt the same way. The commissioners, that the community needs to be heard and that we're important. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, we have two more hands raised, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Mayor Justin Manalo, followed by Remy Racing. And Ms. Manalo, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you first and foremost to all the commissioners who took the time to volunteer in this role. Your work is truly integral to this process. Daly City should remain whole. It's very clear that there's communities of interest. There is a very high population of Asian Pacific Islanders within this area. More than half of Daly City population is of Asian descent. Also, it's actually 56% of Daly City's population, with a big percentage being Filipinos. It's very important that we keep Daly City whole and move with the minimal change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, our next speaker is Remy Racing. And after Remy Racing speaks, I'll do a final call for public comment. And if any other members wish to speak, please do click the raise hand feature. Remy, I'm going to give you the permission to talk and you'll have 2 minutes. Remy, I just allowed you to talk, so please accept. Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is actually Remy's phone. This is Charles Catania, and I'm using her phone. So if that's okay, I'd like to proceed.
Sure, please.
I also am interested in keeping all the unincorporated areas together because the Board of Supervisors are, for all intents and purposes, the town council and decision makers for all of the people in unincorporated areas. They create laws, they create ordinances that govern the unincorporated areas only. And they are our form of government. All these other municipalities and people on the Bayside who are in cities have a town council they can go to in order to voice their concerns about what's going on in the community and what they need. But the unincorporated areas only have the Board of Supervisors. And if the unincorporated areas have no power to elect a supervisor, then they have no say. So I feel that all the unincorporated areas, Bayside and on the coast side, should be put together so they can have some control over representation for their needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public, this will be a last call to raise your hand. And if you wish to speak, please raise your hand now. Mr. Chair, I do see one more hand raised. Magdalene Mui, I'm going to give you the permission to speak and you'll have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. I just want to thank the chair and the commissioner for your hard work. This is quite an informative meeting, and then this is new information to me. So I'd like to know at the end of the day, after you collect all the comments and input and suggestions, you have the 5 priorities, and how are they going to make the decision? Are you going to, is there a particular weight on certain things? Will weight heavier than the other? How you going to make this transparent so we understand your thought process, how it's going to be decided. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, once again, this is the last call to raise your hand if you wish to speak on item number 6. Okay, maybe allow 10 more seconds. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised, so back to you, Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Overhead has his hand raised, but that was a public comment, so we'll save it for the item 7, if that's okay with you. Okay, so hearing no more action for public comment, I'll ask for a motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Been moved in second.
Sure, I'll take the roll call.
Roll call.
Sure. Commissioner Azos?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Bandapali?
Yes.
Commissioner Barber?
Yes.
Commissioner Bledsoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Chan?
Yes.
Mr. Chow?
Yes.
Commissioner Dinan?
Yes.
Commissioner Espinoza?
Yes.
Commissioner Guerrero?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Monzon Ruiz?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Albert?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Romero?
Yes.
Commissioner Salander?
Yes.
And Chair Lawrence?
Yes.
Thank you. Public hearing is now closed. And for the record, Commissioner Davis is absent. Please proceed.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is item 7, commission members' reports. So I'll open the floor for any comments. I'll start with Commissioner Overt, and then we'll go to Bledsoe, Espinosa, and then Commissioner Chan.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. This is really more just a comment about the meeting. In public comment just now, I think there were 3 or 4 people, as I recall, who actually posed questions to the commission. And the format that we're using, effectively, there really isn't a way of answering those questions. But I don't think we want to give people the impression that we're ignoring their questions, because I don't think those questions were rhetorical. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't, to the extent it's possible to do so, direct staff to get back in touch with those individuals and try and provide as best an answer as can be given.
Great recommendation. Can I push it to Jake, to Mr. Mates? Can you have someone on your staff take that action item?
Yes, we can certainly do that. You are also free to direct staff to answer any questions and pose them directly to us now, which may be a little bit more efficient to make sure folks get the answers right now.
And I apologize, Justin. I should have thought of that while it was happening, but I forgot. So.
No problem. I did not take those questions down. If anyone knows them and wants to pose them now, that's great. Otherwise, we can go back to the transcript afterward and get those folks' responses.
I think that'd be the most expeditious way, right? Okay. Commissioner Bledsoe.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to re-raise the issue that I had raised prior to public comment, which was the elimination of one of the proposed maps. And that is the map numbered 57388. This proposed map separates Pacifica into one district, Montero, Moss Beach, and El Granada into a second district, and Half Moon Bay into yet a third. And I think that judging from all the public comment, there should be sufficient support to remove this from consideration. And I'd like to move that the commission does so.
I second that.
Is that appropriate since it's not an agenda item? Can we actually take that action?
Well, Chair Lawrence, I can. I think one thing we did discuss was potentially circling back to item 6B after hearing the public testimony. And 6B was discussion and direction to staff regarding modifications to existing maps and direction to potentially create new maps. So I think it's probably appropriate given kind of what we had decided before moving on to public testimony. But before we actually, sorry, I did have a follow-up question for Ms. Parks. Commissioner Bledsoe, this was, you said map 57388?
Correct.
And I did want to confirm with Ms. Parks whether or not this map is identified as not population balanced. And I just wanted to confirm with Ms. Parks whether or not that is correct.
That's a typo.
Okay.
I identified that immediately. That's a typo. If you actually look at the second page of the PDF, you'll see that there's a total deviation under 10%. The one that should be labeled as not population balanced is 51492. And I am working to correct that as we speak.
Okay, hearing that, we have several of the commissions with their hands raised. I'd rather hear what the commissions have to say before we take a vote in case they have some comment regarding that. I wouldn't want to take a vote before they got a chance to make comments. So with that, I'll start with Commissioner Espinosa.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will say that it was moved and seconded, so the motion is on the floor. So I think we just move into discussion and debate on that. So I guess as a point of order is what I'm raising.
Okay. Okay. Well, are there questions?
Even though I do have comments about it.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Would it be possible just for the public for us to put that particular map back up on the screen? Can Kristen do that? The one that was
marked. Yes. Hold on one moment.
While you do that, Kristen, Mr. Counsel, so can we wait on the motion? Or do we need to act right now and do the verbal roll call?
I think the question has been called by Commissioner Espinosa Murray.
Sorry, I raised a point of order that we can have discussion on the motion itself because there is a motion that's sitting here. Right. So yeah. I would yield to Commissioner Bledsoe, who made the motion.
I'm sorry, what?
Well, we're in discussion. I thought that we'd like let all the commissioners have a chance to have discussion on this item before we vote. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Yes. So why don't we have the commissioners whose hands are raised, they may have a comment on that or something else before we actually vote. So I'll recognize the chair. I recognize Chairman Commissioner Chan.
And just for a point of order, is the motion been withdrawn?
No, I thought it was in the discussion phase.
No, it's not withdrawn.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I did have something to say on the motion on the floor, but I also have comments separate. So I will speak to if you want to, if I have the floor.
please, want you to speak to it.
Yeah, I just want to say I support Commissioner Bledsoe on this. I think the coast is very clear. They do not want to be split up. There's clearly strong opinions about it. It's the most amount of comments that we've received. I would like to respect what the community is asking for in their search for self-determination, having representation on the Board of Supervisors. So I'm with Commissioner Bledsoe, and I do urge the rest of the commission to vote yes on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chan.
I was going to comment on a more general discussion, so I yield my time.
Okay. Commissioner Diner.
Yes, hi, good evening. Regarding specific public map 57388, this is kind of an unacceptable from an East Palo Alto perspective, where communities like East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, Redwood City, Bellhaven should be part of the same district. This map doesn't achieve that, and for that reason and a lot of other ones, I could never support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Chow.
Yes, am I muted? Okay, no, I'm okay. I just want to give an input that one of my contacts, he's trying to reach by calling and using the Zoom, and he was getting errors, but he just wanted to share with me that he wanted the voice to keep Daly City as one and not splitting. So he's very adamant about keeping Daly City in one district. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bandro.
Hi, I do support Commissioner Bullets that we should not, keep all the coastal areas as one unit. And I think it's about time that they have representation on the Board of Supervisors. And also, I was at an event in South San Francisco, and I spoke with a lot of members of the public. And they also made a statement that they want to keep their city as one unit, not be part of multiple districts. So I think we need to take all these comments very seriously. And my question actually to the commissioners as well as to the county is, all the input so far we have received, who is collating it and who is assessing it? And how is that being distributed to the commissioners to review on the 21st? Because there's a lot of information. And there are 15 commissioners, and each of us have our own ideas. And so this is going to be very interesting, and we need to really organize it and be facilitated in a very structured fashion to have a meaningful outcome. So I would like to hear more about this when there's the right appropriate time during this meeting. And also I would like to see Burlingame Hills be part of Burlingame and Cemetery Hills be part of San Mateo. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Medford. Are there any other questions before we vote? Commissioner Bandro did raise another question as to how the data will be collected, sorted, and actually distributed. So I think we can deal with that one later. Am I correct, Brian?
Yeah, I'll defer to Mr. Mates, but that's certainly a question that we can address once the vote is taken on this issue.
I see one hand of the commission before we take the vote. Commissioner Azon, and then we'll take the vote.
Thank you. And just to clarify, a vote in favor is to remove the map and a vote against is to keep the map.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair.
Seeing further, I'll ask for a roll call.
Sure. Okay, so this motion is under 6B. A motion made by Commissioner Bledsoe to remove map 57388 from consideration, seconded by Commissioner Espinoza. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll take the roll call. Commissioner Azos,
Yes.
Mr. Bonderpally,
Yes.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Bledsoe,
Yes.
Mr. Chan,
Yes.
Mr. Chow,
Yes.
Mr. Dinan.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Espinoza,
Yes.
Commissioner Guerrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Monzon Ruiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Albert,
Aye.
Commissioner Romero,
Yes.
Commissioner Salander,
Yes.
and Chair Lawrence.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes with Commissioner Davis absent. Please proceed. And I do want to mention, we have another hand raised. Public hearing is closed, so I will lower the hand on the attendee side.
Okay, I'll recognize Mr. Mays.
Good evening, commissioners. To respond to Commissioner Bondrapali's question, all of the comments received at this meeting, they're being transcribed or they will be transcribed. All of the comments received in writing, and so far most of the comments have been to the email address, are assembled and available for the commissioners and the public on the smcdistrictlines.org website. It was the link I sent the commissioners earlier this week. That list will continue to be populated and updated, like I said, with the comments tonight, as well as any additional comments that come in. That list is updated on an ongoing basis. Any submitted maps will be posted on the draft maps tab of that website as well.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Commissioner Chan and then Commissioner Salazar.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. You know, something that has occurred to me throughout this process is not just your comments, Chair Lawrence, in the beginning of this meeting, but the comments from multiple people in the from the public that the Board of Supervisors is their only is their sole municipal government. But the problem is that there's too little population to build a district that where those people can be represented effectively without also pulling in population from the incorporated areas. And so this is, to me, this feels like a highly constrained problem that doesn't necessarily have an optimal solution. And when confronted with a situation like this, one thing that we might consider exploring is trying to loosen one of those constraints. And both myself and Commissioner Monzon Ruiz have asked in previous meetings about the feasibility of increasing the number of districts. Now, I know county staff has said that it would require something like state law to be changed in order for something like this to happen. But I think it would be, perhaps this is the signal that our advisor commission needs to say something formal about this, that in order for where it's not possible for us to build the districts of equal population size and that effectively represent communities of interest and don't split cities up too much without having a little bit more freedom to create, to not have to meet the equal population size constraint. So perhaps this is something we consider. I don't know what mechanisms are available, but if we could say something about that formally, that might be just the push needed to get some action by the county or the state to do something to give us more freedom to meet this challenge. Thanks.
I'm not sure how to answer it, although I think we're constrained by the existing rules and regulations of the law, but I'll ask Mr. Silverman or Brian to comment on that particular comment as to, do we have any flexibility?
Well, with respect to creating 7 districts now, no, you don't, you can't, it's impossible. To the extent that you wanted to express to the board an interest in 7 districts in the future, there are probably a lot of ways you could go about doing that. The easiest would be when this is before the board, come and make public comment, which you can absolutely do. I will observe that there are a lot of push and pulls when it comes to increasing districts, the number of districts. You know, for example, if you had 7 supervisors, you would increase the cost of government, at least that portion of government, by approximately 20%. But in any event, to the extent that there's a desire among the commissioners to express to the board that you would like to see 7 districts at some point, there are mechanisms to do that. I'd suggest that perhaps we take that up. We can agendize it, for a future meeting, because it's not agendized for today.
Okay.
And just to piggyback on that, Chair Lawrence, Commissioner Chan, I mean, just in the first instance, your comment will be noted and made part of the record that Mr. Mates explained. So that's going to be included in that. So that's certainly one vehicle in addition to the others that Mr. Silverman mentioned. And just to clarify, and I think we discussed this before, but so it would require a charter amendment to increase the number of districts from 5 to 7, and that requires a vote brought to the entire county, right? So it would have to be a measure that is set before an established election date. And so obviously being able to do that between now and the deadline on December 15th is impossible, which was Mr. Silverman's point.
Okay. I think the
Just
chair.
one clarification. I don't think I said the number 7. If someone said, if you heard that, I'm not sure when that number got introduced. But I just don't think, in my recollection, I didn't say that number, but
you didn't. Seven was mentioned before, and
okay.
There's at least one county with 7 supervisors. But no, you did not mention 7.
Okay.
Because 6 is difficult. You don't want 3 votes, right? So if you increase it, you would go to 7.
Okay. Chair recognizes Commissioner Salazar. She's been waiting patiently.
Commissioner Espinoza Murray, did you raise your hand before me? I think you may have. You can totally go ahead.
I did, but I like that the chair is choosing folks that have spoken up less. So if you'd speak first, I would yield it back to you. Thanks.
All right, just wanted to check. Yeah, so I just want to raise the question about if Daly City and the coastal and unincorporated communities feel that they share a common interest and we're okay with being in the same district. We had a few members of the public mention that the AAPI community in those areas in Daly City is a community of interest. And I don't represent the people that live in either of those communities, but I really want to encourage more public comment. Like, are you guys okay with being put together? I just want to raise that.
Thank you. Commissioner Bandrapalli.
Thank you. So Justin Mates, I just want to clarify what I'm asking is that, yes, I do see a lot of public comment and it's all out there on the website, but somebody needs to take a look at the public comment that was made. And then we need to work with NDC to create the maps that reflect all the comments being made, public comments today and the public comments made either in person or by the map, or that's something that needs to be done. And that's a lot of work. And those maps need to be created. And I'm asking, is the expectation that the commissioners need to do that? I mean, that is a, that I personally request that we need help on that, because we can review the maps and we can do that piece, but actually going through these 40 emails and, doing this definitely need to be looked at very closely with, and then work with NDC to generate those maps prior to the meeting on the 21st. And then we can, so that's what I'm asking. And I don't know, I was clear last time. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you, Commissioner Bondrapalli, for that clarification. Yes, that is a process. So Kristen and the NDC team, they get all that public comment as well. And as you may have noticed when Ms. Wells was talking about some of the maps and the coast-side maps, she referenced the public comment that had been received to date. So yes, that information, NDC receives those comments as well, and identifies relevant themes and builds those into maps. If there are particular themes, particular comments that you think bear extra importance or significance that you want to highlight and include as part of the direction from the commission tonight to NDC, please do that. But yes, we see, and NDC sees all of that public comment. And I also just want to note that NDC, they're demographer experts. They look at these things. They know what the legal priorities are. Staff does not participate in the process of highlighting public comment or things like that. We appreciate if the commission would like to do some of that for NDC, but then NDC also takes some of that in when NDC prepares the maps that were presented tonight and that will be presented on October 21st.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mays. The chair recognizes Commissioner Monzon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to echo with what Mr. Chan, with the Commissioner Chan mentioned earlier. When I learned about this commission day one and we shared with the community, one of the suggestions was to please voice it out to increase the amount of districts. With that, I would like to suggest, Chair, if you can put an agenda in the future meeting, maybe Mr. Mays could educate us a little bit more the possibilities for that in the future. We understand that there is a timeline right now, but I think there's an opportunity right now to at least leave it on the table. And the reason is because what I can gather from all our comments from the public and the commissioners is that for some reason, some supervisors don't have the capacity or the time to actually help each district. And having more district could be more local service. Having one supervisor for a big, large area that we are used to, we would like to keep it that way, will make it too thin. So if we have more supervisors, it should be more accessible to the communities. For example, in South San Francisco, there is, the Old Town area, there is no representation from the supervisor. So there is a lot of desire to be on a more robust supervisory area like District 5. There is one part of the city that would like to be as a whole. However, there is another need, which is, now that I'm learning this new terminology, a community of interest, which is Old Town of South San Francisco. And that would like to be on a more robust supervisor area that is not being experienced right now. There is a lack of service, right? So we all have our needs, and I highly respect the coastal. I appreciate that you came on board. I wish we could have more from our different communities, but we also have our needs in South San Francisco, for example, right? I would like to, we explore at least from this commission, the possibility of having more supervisor districts, because that should enhance the way that they can serve us. And I agree with some of the public comments. That's the only way, that's the only government help that is close to us. So as a given example, the only opportunities that we had to talk with our supervisor in our area are Fridays at 9 a.m., which are not accessible for most people that we work in 7 to 4 or 8 to 5. So because probably they don't have, maybe the supervisor doesn't have time. By having more supervisor, we hope it could be more available. So I understand that we don't want to be disrupted. I highly respect that, but let's be mindful. Even though everything costs more, we're here also investing our time tonight, right? We're going the extra mile tonight. Well, if it costs more to have 2 more supervisors, we should contemplate that possibility. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. As Mr. Silverman indicated, we may have to consider agendizing some type of discussion regarding that matter. But the chair recognizes Commissioner Chow and then Commissioner Guerrero.
Is it my turn to talk?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you, Chair Lawrence. I just want to mention to see, because tonight is the night that we get a lot of public comments. Is there any way that we will have one more meeting in November so we can have the 21st to also get more comments from the public? because that's only 2 weeks away. And I think, the public that spoke tonight will get more of their community to get involved. So it's something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. I know the schedule is tight, and I don't know if Brian wants to address that. She mentioned another meeting, but I think the schedule is set today for us to recommend maps on the 21st.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also point out that there is a separate agenda item to discuss next hearing dates. And so I would recommend we wait at least until then to have that conversation.
Great, okay. Then the chair recognizes Commissioner Guerrero.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I also just wanted to thank Commissioner Salander for, mentioning the level of engagement that District 5 has also, been during the course of this process as well. I welcome additional feedback. And I'm also wanted to second Vice Chair Romero's sentiment of, some potential other scenarios of that pertain to District 5. So just wanted to also, lend my support behind that. But to the point of sort of, Daly City and in particularly District 5 being an AAPI district, I think it's going to be very important to consider, particularly since there have been comments regarding keeping the Daly City, for example, intact, since it is not just the largest city in the district, but also in the county. So just wanted to also mention that as well. And I don't want to mischaracterize a public comment that I think I heard, but I also believe we did hear some public comment where even from some coastal folks that even the minimal change seems to be the one that may be amenable to even folks on the coast side.
Thank you, Commissioner Guerrero. Commissioner Salazar, and then Commissioner Espinosa.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to quickly contextualize the comment I made. So I know a lot of members of the public did mention that the minimum change map sounded like a good idea to move forward with. And I brought up the area of Daly City because I noticed between two of the NDC maps that, the Daly City area was either included with like in District 5 or in the coast map was included in in District 5 differently, but separate from other communities like Colma and Brisbane. So I think that's a pretty key difference and something to consider moving forward, whether if one is more acceptable than the other. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, commissioners, for all your comments. I did want to have an ask for a map or two. I know I had mentioned one earlier. But after hearing feedback and personally talking to members of the community around San Mateo County, I'd like to ask that we have a map that one includes the coastside and unincorporated areas together. We've discussed that. And also the hilly areas or some of the unincorporated areas that are currently attached to the coast. I think that at this stage, since we don't have an opportunity to increase the number of board of supervisors, there has to be some bending there in terms of what's attached to the coast side. So I'm proposing that we maybe consider, as Commissioner Olbert was stating, the hilly areas of San Carlos being different from the flat areas of San Carlos, things like that we can consider. The other is the least amount of cities being split. We've heard a lot of comments from the mayor of Daly City, another council member of Daly City speaking up and the importance of those being together. I think that most councils would come on here and probably say the same thing, that we want to stay together. So that's something that we should just assume is the desire for most cities to stay together, and we should seek to keep cities together as much as possible. They tend to be communities of interest. People live in certain cities for a reason. The other is that we have at least two majority Asian American districts, probably most likely District 5 and the possibility of District 3. We are a majority, actually the highest population in San Mateo County is the Asian American population, so we should definitely seek to have that representation. I know it's not our number one decision maker for what a district should look like, but it's something that definitely can be taken into account, and we should take that into account. The other is that we have at least one district that has a plurality of voter turnout that is Latinx, most likely District 4. And the reason why I say voters is because you can actually shape a district that is majority Latinx, but a huge portion of immigrant non-citizens and that are not voting folks. So you could say it's largely Latino, but you're probably always going to get non-Latino, Latinx person winning in this district. So those are my suggestions for us to possibly try to create a map that includes those 4 requirements that I've just asked for.
Thank you, Commissioner. Some points well taken. Commissioner Ola. Over.
Sorry, Chair Lawrence. I thought you said Olaf, and I thought, oh, I
okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that I support what Commissioner Espinoza-Murray said. However, I do ask staff just to be careful, because I remember them guiding us about how we have to be careful not to do anything that looks like racial gerrymandering, racial or ethnic gerrymandering. I just hope that we will respect that as well. Communities of interest, very critically important. Drawing things specifically for, it sounds to me like drawing things specifically for some particular racial group is just not allowed. And I would rather not have us do something that just gets thrown out because it's not allowed.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no further hands, well, Commissioner Guerrero, did you raise your hands? Commissioner Espinoza. I'll start with Commissioner Guerrero.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I think Commissioner Espinoza-Murray and I would probably, feel the same way of, these are a variety of factors that we're considering, and these are obviously comments that we just want to add into the mix for consideration. And in no way are we intending to, for that to, be not in compliance with some of the federal standards.
Thank you. Commissioner Espinoza.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just echoing Commissioner Guerrero, that's exactly it, right? It's we've heard from the communities the importance of keeping certain communities of interest, like we've heard Daly City, the Filipino, and the Asian Pacific Islander community. And those are communities of interest, and those are things that we must take into account. Obviously, it's not the only thing and the sole reason. So as long as it's not the sole reason, it's my understanding that it would not be considered not okay, right? So I just want to clarify that and make sure that I'm not saying that is the only reason we should have these districts, but it is important that we consider that as we look at the population and the demographics of our county, so that we ensure that we have representation on the board. We currently have an all-white board and most likely all-white male, right, if we continue with the status quo. And I just want to throw out there that even though some people suggested that no change or the least amount of change is probably really good, I did not join this commission for the least amount of change, but instead for the most amount of change that benefits the most of our different communities, especially around, and I think I've been vocal about this, our coast side or unincorporated areas, those areas that are most marginalized and disadvantaged, so that they have that representation. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Espinoza. I think we all joined to make sure that there was fair representation across the board here. Hearing there's no more comments from the commission, I'll move to item 8, which is discussion of next hearing dates.
And Commissioner, just for the record, there's 2 hands raised in the public side. I just want to mention that the public hearing is closed, so I will be lowering those 2 hands. So at this time, we're not taking public comment. So please proceed, Mr. Chair.
I see Mr. Mates raise his hand.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I just wonder whether or not this would be a good time potentially for Ms. Parks to maybe relay kind of what she's heard in terms of directions on additional maps that the commission would like to see on the 21st.
Excellent idea. Ms. Parks, I'll yield the floor to you.
All right, let me summarize my notes, and then please, commissioners, I know I've probably missed something. So I have a note to see a map that incorporates Old South San Francisco into District 5. A note that I think is from a commissioner wanting to keep East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, Redwood City, and Bellhaven together in one district. I note to keep the hills of Burlingame with the city of Burlingame. Similarly, the hills of San Mateo with the city of San Mateo. Paying special attention to the AAPI Filipino communities of interest in Daly City, although we still, I don't have any specific notes about which other cities or communities Daly City should be grouped with, just sort of a focal point, I suppose, in my notes for Daly City, and more map options that will improve the representation for the coast by grouping them with unincorporated communities. And that's all I have, so let me know what I'm missing.
Commissioner Obert.
Thank you, Chair Lawrence. I just wanted to say that I did send a request by email to Justin, and I think I copied David Silverman on it, that basically asked for something that may be similar to what has already been asked, which is to build a map showing all of the unincorporated areas in the coastal community and such minor additional add-ons as necessary to get them to the minimum size level. Base a map on that, and then keep Daly City whole and sort of let everything else fall where it may. And I had sent that by email, as I said, to Justin, because when we were talking about this earlier, it was indicated, or I thought I heard it indicated, that we could send in requests that way as well. So I just wanted to share that I had sent that in.
Great, thank you. With that, now let's move to item 8, which is a discussion of the next hearing dates. Our next date now is set for the 21st of this month. Are there any comments, suggestions regarding that particular date? Mr. Mates, you raise your hand.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lawrence. Just a couple of clarifying issues about, for some reason, there's always an initial echo, but I think that took care of it now. Just a couple of quick clarifying things. I think I had misspoken earlier. I said our next meeting was September 21st. I hope it's clear it's October 21st. Also, I had said and encouraged the public, if they want to maximize the opportunity for you all to consider their input before that meeting, to submit it by the 16th. I think I said September, but I meant October. I wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to go back to one issue that Commissioner Obert asked, which was that we follow up with the public comment. I've confirmed with the clerk, unfortunately, we don't have the contact information of the public today. So what we will do is go back to the transcription, get those questions, and we'll answer those questions right off the bat at the next commission meeting. So hopefully members of the public who ask those questions will also be in attendance on October 21st, so we can get those questions answered.
Okay, I see Commissioner Romero raise her hands.
Thank you. I was trying to, well, I'd like to propose if we could move the meeting from October 21st, if it's possible to move to a later time. I understand that there's a couple commissioners who are unable to make that date. And I feel like this is a critical time to get representation from all of the different districts represented here. I know it's challenging to find a date that works for everyone. But just putting it out there, feel strongly that we should have as many commissioners here if possible.
Through the chair, if I may respond to that request, and of course, council, please jump in if I misstate anything. So first of all, Vice Chair Romero, completely share your concerns. The October 21st date was chosen, as one of the dates that more people could make, but understanding that we didn't have any date that everybody could make. But absolutely, we want as much participation from commissioners as possible. The issue, of course, we have, and I think this is why we have this as an agenda item, is that we are really jammed up, as Mr. Silverman mentioned. So the Board of Supervisors really has to take this up in November, and so we can push the next meeting back. Potentially, we could push it back a week. Potentially, we did not survey on that last week of October, so I'm not sure if there are dates that work better for folks there. But as we get into the last week of October, we really start getting a pretty tight window for this to happen. So that's the main consideration. And with that, I'll stop talking and let the commission discuss.
Commissioner Chan.
Yeah, so I was just, in terms of the board having to take this up in November, so I just checked the calendar and it looks like the first board meeting in November is the 9th. So does that mean like, as long as we decide on a recommendation before the 9th, or I guess 72 hours before the 9th, whatever the requirement is for agendizing things, that would be on time, that would be sufficient?
I'd like to defer to council on this. I think it's more than 72 hours because of the additional publication and notice requirements required for a public meeting under the elections code for purposes, or public hearing under the election code for purposes of this process. I think it's actually greater than 72 hours, but Brian, could you fill in the details?
Yeah, so interestingly, so the elections code 21508 says that, so I think it's for hearings that are at least 28 days before the deadline. And the deadline would be December 15th, right? Those hearings have to be noticed at least 5 days before the actual hearing date. Now, that 5-day notice requirement drops down to 3 days, basically corresponding with the standard, Brown Act 72-hour notice requirement when it's less than 28 days before the deadline. So to simplify that, the board meeting on November 9th would still require the 5-day notice in advance of the hearing, if that makes sense.
Okay, so
this actually leaves November 2nd, 3rd. We always like to build in a little extra time because we do have to publish and notice these things. And if there's any kind of issue that comes up, we'd like to always have a buffer, but that basically puts us right at the first couple days of November.
And if I may, Justin, if we're further kind of talking about, push and pull, we talked before about, potentially, if necessary, kind of given the amount of information that's been disseminated tonight and the amount of public comment and the fact we're, still having accepting maps, we talked about potentially adding, a third meeting. Of course, if we push back this meeting, that leaves almost no time for a potential third meeting. And so just want to make sure that the board is, or the commission rather, is kind of fully considering, the push-pull elements of pushing back the hearing set for the 21st, because that would make very difficult the third hearing option, if not impossible.
Thank you. I'll recognize Commissioner Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to propose us adding an additional meeting versus just pushing it back. It sounds like there is room to get more feedback from the public, and it also allows us to have more time to review options. So I would recommend that not only do we keep it on the 21st, but maybe adding an additional meeting on the 28th so that it gives us more time for us to expand on public comment. And if there are any commissioners that agree, I would ask that you speak up.
I second that.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Vanderpali.
I thought that.
Chair recognizes Commissioner Guerrero.
No need for me to beat a dead horse. That was what I was going to talk about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Salazar.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think adding an additional meeting is really important. And I also want to highlight the importance that once we decide on a map to show to the Board of Supervisors, it's important that the public has time to review that ahead of their meeting so that they can make comment if they have any problems or if they support it. I think that's also important.
Okay. To Ms. Parks, does that give you time if we were to propose a new maps on that second meeting to prepare them for distribution so the public can see them before the Board of Supervisors meets? Great, okay. I see a couple of hands up again. Are there other commissioners that have any comments regarding that second meeting? Commissioner Ezzo.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we've had a lot of meetings. We had 5 meetings in the past 2 weeks. Why do we think that more people or different people or we're going to get better feedback coming up than we got in the recent past?
I don't think it's solely on the feedback from the public. I think the decision is that we're going to see several maps, and can we really make a decision, you know, with just one meeting left? And I'll throw it open to the floor for discussion.
Through the chair, I think it is really critical to have another meeting because if we are going to review quite a few maps, it's going to take time. And then we want to have that float, the flexibility to maybe we, you know, because we will be missing 2 commissioners and then maybe they will be able to attend the 3rd meeting and then we will have all the commissioners together, make that final decision and make that final recommendation to the BOS. And also, I really want to thank Justin Mates and his team for putting together the spreadsheet and asking the commissioners to make public comment at the city council meetings. What a great opportunity for all of us to advocate and get more comments out from the public. You know, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So this will really give us an opportunity to really, the 3rd meeting will allow us to finalize the maps. So that's my thought. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Commissioner Guerrero and then Commissioner Chow.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the sentiment that I think it'll be really important to, you know, allow ample time for us to review maps. And many commissioners have brought up here tonight the importance of you know, using this position and engagement of some of our constituents, especially of how quickly this process has transpired. So that's sort of the intent of another opportunity for a meeting for us as commissioners to be able to, you know, have some more time to deliberate regarding these maps, as well as with the hopes of additional engagement, as mentioned by county staff and even, you know, Ms. Parks, that we're in the phase now where I think we're going to be getting more sort of feedback now that there are actual options on the table.
Well said. Commissioner Shaw.
Yes, I echoed what Commissioner Guerrero was saying. I think additional meeting on November 2nd will be great because we're going to be having, you know, representations in the city councils the next 2 weeks. Then I'm pretty sure that's going to be more comments about the map and stuff. So 21st will be so short a notice to get, you know, all the public comments. So I vote for November 2nd meeting, additional one. Thank you.
I think the date mentioned was the 28th. You're now mentioning the 2nd. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. So if it's 28, then yeah,
28,
1 week after 20. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you,
okay.
Chair Lawrence.
Sure. Are there any other comments regarding, you know, establishing that second meeting? Do we need to take a vote, or since there's no objections to it?
No need for a vote. I think we'll just need to confirm that date though,
Okay.
Chair Lawrence.
Okay. Okay, no further comments, then I'll say that the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Have
Thank
a
you.
good night.
Thank you. Have a
Good night,
good
everyone.
Everyone, good night.
Thank you, everyone.
The time is now 9:09 p.m. and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, Suki. Thank you.